So my mom used to tell a story about this friend of hers who went to the same church and had the same minister for 30 plus years, if you can imagine that. Not here. She was a feisty thing, my mom's friend Ivy, and after the service one Sunday as she was shaking the minister's hand, she said, "I liked your sermon, Henry, but then I've always liked that sermon." Well, if you were here back in February of 2011, you've already heard part of this talk. Because until 8:30 this morning, I had no idea that I was doing this. And so I went frantically looking for something that I could do. Because while I could easily stand up here and talk for 20 minutes, it wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. So I found this. Ironically, it was a talk I gave when the theme for the month was the winds of change. It was written 2 weeks after Reverend Elizabeth left us, 1.5 months after we moved from our old location, and our office manager of several years had retired. We had 7 days before we were electing a new leadership council. We had been through a lot of change all at once. And I said then that in order for us to move forward, we probably needed to grieve and release what we had lost. Does that sound familiar? Since Reverend Elizabeth, we have had Reverend Marty, Reverend Barbara, Reverend Lynn, and Reverend Myrna all serving in various capacities, but providing a certain degree of stability for our community. And now we find that we have to leave our church home again. A place we have loved and it has served us well for a long time. Show of hands, how many people really love grieving? Only one, and that's Drew, and he's lying. How many of you last year at the Burning Bowl wrote on that piece of paper that you surrendered to the flames this year? I'm letting go of stability. I'm releasing everything familiar. What I really want this year is to give up what I love most. My intention for 2018, to grieve. Probably nobody did that, right? Not even Drew. So many of us say we want change as long as we don't have to change ourselves or give up anything that we like. But that's exactly what change involves. Releasing our attachments to the old, letting go at all levels of our being, and making space for the new. Grieving is the process that we use to clear out our emotional house, to let go, to detach, and if need be, to forgive. As Farrell read in our reading this morning, death is the passing of life, and life is the stringing together of many little passings. Our spiritual community is in the midst of a number of passings. As the rabbi so eloquently articulated, that is what life is truly all about. Our soul is born into this body. We go through a series of events, and then we depart this life, dying in the process of being born into our soul's next experience. Each birth leads to change and death and rebirth. Some people say they really like change. Perhaps they do. Or perhaps they delude themselves until something or someone upsets one of their sacred cows. But the reality for most of us is that we resist change, even when it's for the better. Some of us, like me, I confess, are very clear that we have created our world the way we want it to be, and we do not appreciate people messing around changing things. When I lived in Murray, I used to host a number of small gatherings at my house for various social occasions. Almost all of them were BYOB and potluck because I don't cook. My kitchen had this large island in the middle, and at the beginning of each event, people gathered in the kitchen, putting the last-minute touches on their contribution, setting out the food, talking to each other as they caught up about what was happening in their lives. It was usually a really fun time with increasing volumes as each new person joined the group. And at one of these gatherings many years ago, someone called out, "Do you have a corkscrew?" And before I could answer, Reverend Donald yelled back, "It's in that second drawer. And if you come here in 10 years from now, it will still be in the second drawer." He was right. The paradox, of course, is that I work as a hospital chaplain. Many of the days of my life, I have the privilege of being with people who are dying. I help them to let go of this life and work with their families as their worlds have been shattered, helping them to let go and grieve their loved one's loss, and learning from them how to let go myself. I often describe my work as juggling on the deck of the Titanic. Just when I think I have all the balls in the air, we hit another wave and everything shifts beneath my feet. How in the world does someone as rigid as I can be inhabit a world in which everything is in flux? I do it the only way I think any of us really can, by God's grace. I am asked by others often, how do I know what to do in so many different situations? And my answer is that I don't know. But I don't have to know, because I know the one that knows. I only need to surrender to my delusion that I am in charge and trust that Spirit will guide me moment by moment. I also know this is exactly what is happening for this community as well. Spirit has a wonderful plan for us, and together we have all the skills we need to get there. But we can't do it if we're dragging the past with us. We need to grieve and move on. One definition of grief is that it is a multifaceted response to loss, especially to the loss of someone or something to which a bond was formed. I'm guessing that if you've been coming here for a few years, that you have formed attachments to one of those ministers I mentioned, and that you may still be grieving the loss of them. It is my belief that to the degree that you complete any grieving of loss will be the degree to which you are free to move forward in your own spiritual development and into our amazing next collective adventure. Each of the ministers who have served us shared to one degree or another their inner struggle to listen to Spirit's calling and their struggle to have the courage to say yes to that calling, when in so many ways it would have been easier to keep on keeping on. I once faced a similar choice in my life, and I did not follow the promptings of Spirit. I had a successful counseling practice for 25 years in North Carolina, where I was able to support myself easily, working no more than 20 hours a week. I spent 6 weeks a year at the beach, and I had a 3-day work week. I was happily single, loved my home, my church, and was very content with every aspect of my life. I went to a church workshop one afternoon, and I was startled when I suddenly burst into tears when the speaker said, "Just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you have to do it forever. And I was sobbing. What was that about? I loved counseling and was very comfortable in my life. As we've already covered, I am not big on change. I had just moved kicking and screaming from my home of 20 years, remodeled a new home with $60,000 of improvements so that I could live and work there for the rest of my life without the need for a lot of maintenance or effort or change. And then I fell in love. For a long time, I was very attached to my story about what happened next. It had all the ingredients of a very bad soap opera. Suffice it to say, it turned my world upside down. I ended up being stuck here in Utah where I was not licensed and could not work as a professional counselor. I was divorced, unemployed, had been kicked out of my church, had declared bankruptcy because of someone else's debt in my name, and most of my longtime support system was all the way across the country. Poor me. I wish I could tell you that grief always follows that neat pattern that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross describes. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, acceptance. I wish I could tell you that I moved quickly through the grieving process and did so with grace. I did not. I was angry and hurt and broken, and I crawled into this center bloodied and bruised. And I found a home here. Reverend Donald counseled me through the worst of it. He comforted me when I needed it and kicked my butt when I was just wallowing in my story. Myrna asked me to volunteer doing name tags at the front door, and I learned some people's names. I started taking classes, which helped me get my head on straight, and I made some great friends. Believe me, I did not get to acceptance all at once. But by doing my work of grieving and letting go, I reached the place that all those old hurts now pass harmlessly through my mind. All of that drama happened, I know, because I ignored Spirit's promptings to leave the counseling practice that I so dearly loved in order to discern what my new calling was. I believe that Spirit first speaks to us in whispers, then shouts, and finally hits us with a cosmic 2x4 if we do not pay attention. And all of that drama was my cosmic 2x4. My grieving process included a month-long silent spiritual retreat with no cell phone. Actually, there weren't cell phones then much, but no computer, no TV, nothing. Just me and the silence and Reverend Jan, who came in once a week to make sure I was still sane and help me process what I was going through. I started it with an ultimatum to God that said she had darn well better tell me by the end of that month what she really wanted me to do, and she better make it really clear. No more vague impressions. I wanted visions, angels, and music, or stone tablets with written instructions. Now, I was pretty sure that my guidance would be to go back to North Carolina and get my counseling practice going again. I'd only been gone 2 years, and to go back to my cushy life. But no. I, who love stability and planning and knowing what to expect, was led to become a chaplain, where no two patients and no two families and no 2 days are ever alike. And it makes my heart sing. I bet each of you have had some similar experience, a time of holding on to what was gone, of not following your inner guidance, of wanting to stay in what feels at least familiar, if not good, or to keep others from doing what Spirit was leading them to do because you didn't trust that you could not only survive the loss, but thrive in a new situation. So here at the Salt Lake Center for Spiritual Living, change has come to us again, and we need to grieve and say goodbye. If we refuse to let go of this space, if we compare the new to the old with a closed mind and are not open to the moment-to-moment guidance and gifts of Spirit, we will miss the blessings that our new spiritual birthright as God's beloved. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said this: God will not let us stay in any one place too long. She will let us stay just long enough to gather the experience necessary to the unfolding and advancement of the soul. This is a wise provision, for should we stay here too long, we would become too set, too rigid, too inflexible. Nature demands the change in order that we may advance. I am often privileged to be present when this life's ultimate change happens, when the soul slips from the dying body and moves into what comes next. It is a holy experience to be there, because as that time approaches, the veil between this world and the next becomes very thin. Often spirits from the other side come, and if I pay attention, I can be in that other place for a moment. I know with certainty that death of the body is not the death of our essence. And if that ultimate change is so sacred and safe, can the smaller changes and losses we deal with each day be any less in God's hands? I think not. If you're feeling the loss of how things used to be here, I encourage you this week to ask for prayer. See a practitioner. Write out what you're grateful for having learned from the old. And then, as we do in the Burning Bowl each year, release it. Change can be difficult, but if we surrender and grieve, change will allow us to advance. I am so grateful to the ministers and members who birthed and nourished this center long before I arrived. And I'm honored to be with all of you as we do our part to grow in our own lives and build this community for those who will come after us. I know that as we grieve our losses, we're freed to embrace our better future. The winds of change are blowing and calling us to come up higher. Right now, I affirm, change is God and change is good. I ended that talk 7.5 years ago with, who knows, maybe before Reverend Donald's next visit, I'll even move the corkscrew. I did better than that. 4.5 years ago, I moved from that house into a condo. It has simplified my life greatly. But the move happened very quickly. A lot of wonderful people from this community helped pack and move and unpack me, and to this day, I have no idea where many things are. It drives me crazy because I love stability. But my new place is much better suited to my life now. It has greatly shortened my commute to work, and I've met a lot of wonderful neighbors. As the rabbi said, death is the passing of life, and life is the stringing together of many little passings. As a community, we're facing a new passing. I will miss this lovely space that has been our home, but I'm also excited for this opportunity for us to come together as a community. I remember the excitement when we were doing this building. And so I'm excited about our moving forward, about releasing our attachment to what was, and to opening our minds and hearts and souls to the adventure of what is to come. Are you willing to join me? All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. You're very gracious. All right, let's be in prayer together. And so we settle in to that sacred space of the divine one that lives within each one of us, that lives and moves and has its being through us, that is seeking new expression for this magnificent spiritual community. I know change is hard, but I also know it's the only constant in life. And so today we surrender our resistance to change. We surrender our attachment to what has been and open our hearts to the adventure of what is to come. We commit ourselves anew as a community to loving each other, to doing our part, to asking for Spirit's guidance in what is my part. How am I called to serve this community? Only as we let go of what was can we embrace what is to be and what is. I think about all the things that are happening in our world today. About the people in the fires and the floods and all the people in the hospital I serve who are dying. I often leave there and say to myself, shut up, Linda, you don't have cancer. And so I invite each one of us here today to put into perspective that we are just letting go of a building. That something new awaits us. And we're not going to be in a shelter. We're going to have a space that serves us and allows us to move forward without some of the financial burdens that have been here. And for that, I am so grateful. I'm grateful today for our leadership council, for their wise counsel and their willingness to make a tough choice, but a choice that they know is the right thing for our community. I'm grateful for our practitioners who sustain us with their prayer, who are right here and right now knowing the best and highest for what is to come for us. I'm grateful for all who have come before, for all the spiritual homes we've had, and for everything that has brought us to this moment. And in this moment, I release it all into that law which does the work in the deepest gratitude of my heart. I'm grateful for this community. And so in this moment together we say, and so it is.